Hello. Welcome to the focus. Today we are going to the foundational concept in our HCM, which is about the legal structures. So, the core HCM and core HR, we start with defining any price, then give us a very entity, telling a single enterprise that we define in system. And then after which you would define your geographies so we can get geographic structures that we need to define. After which we need to define the legal structures. So how the sequence goes is after the government structure, we define the legal structures, after which organization structures, like lessons learned, divisions, if there are divisions, department locations. So department location, they are the structures, while implementation undertake this location department as a part of the organization structure. Organization required players and department. And thereafter, we define all the workforce structures for positions, then go to the festival. So as part of this steps, the legal structures set up around very. We will see the basic details about how we can define the legal structures. So to understand this, we must understand so what are legal structures that we need to define us. This depends on the organization, the location where it is operating. So if it's a US region, they follow a different reporting purposes. They follow, whereas Canada, they have some other legal structures. India, they have something else. So we must understand the basic of all this legislation to define this legal structures of the system. So the basic concept that we have here is the legal entity. So you must have heard about enterprise. So right after enterprise, what takes the next precedence is legal entity. So let's say if there is an organization, they operate for a multiple department, for multiple businesses, like Reliance, Adani. So they operate for multiple, they have multiple businesses. It's a large industry. In this case, the enterprise is Adani or Reliance. They have Adani Power, ports, Adani, local gas, everything. They work in almost all the sectors. So in this case, the legal entity all acts as this separate businesses there, or the registered company. So Adani's Adani Power, Adani ports, Adani enterprises, they are all registered as a separate entity. So which all can be considered as the legal entities. So legal entity is nothing but a registered organization. So with the government, they registered it saying that we have created this business and we are registering with you. We will be compliant with whatever the rules we have based on our country. And based on that, there will be a registration number, everything. So it's like a registered location. And for that registered the company, you have a registered address actually. So that registered address, what we have is the legal employer. So it's basically an address for the legal entity, for the company. So what if I have to read out what I have mentioned here? It's the organization recognized by the law. So you will be allowed to employ people, you will be allowed to keep on the payroll to them, provide the payroll, uh, calculate the taxes, everything you are allowed by law in that particular thing. So that was about the legal entity. So in the legal entity, okay, I was telling about the legal address, but this legal employer, right? Legal employer and PSU is a different thing that means on legal entities. So if you say that, okay, this is the entity where it is allowed by regulations, it is allowed to employ people, because you can hire the people. In that case, you mark the legal entity as legal employer. So while creating a legal entity itself, there is a option you can enable them as a legal employer. So that in that you can choose while hiring an employee, you can only select the legal employer, not the legal entity, not the fields, not the tax reporting, nothing. You can select the legal employer. So likewise, if you're allowed to do the payroll as well for the legal entity, that let's say there is a legal employer, they hire some people, but the same legal employer entity what we have created, if they are also allowed to do the payroll process for those employees, then we mark that legal entity as the PSU as well. So while creating legal entity, I have now enabled legal employer, which means I'm allowed to hire the employees. If I'm also doing the payroll with the same legal entity, then I enable them as a PSU, which means the payroll statutory limit, the payroll processing is also active under this legal entity. But if I say I have multiple other sub legal entities, so what I do, but everything comes under one payroll processing limit. In that case, I'll create one legal entity as PSU. So I don't enable them as legal employee. So that legal entity is only for payroll processing. It can be only a single physical location organization. That means organization is only located in a one physical location, right? In Karnataka. But I say I have a different other processes like other departments in that. So I want to create everything as a legal. I would be able to do that. How do I do it? I can create legal entity as PSP so that this is the only entity which acts as a parent entity where all the payroll takes place. And I create multiple sub-legal entities or multiple legal entities which I market as legal employees. So I'll hire all the employees on the separate legal entity based on the divisions that I have within the organization. But everything while payroll is getting processed, I have it under the parent legal entity. So that is also allowed. So I hope we understood the difference between the legal employer and the PSU under the legal entity. So it's all the same. If I create, if you're seeing any legal entity, you can go see if the legal entity is marked as a legal employer or PSU. So while hiring an employer, if you are able to choose a legal employer, which means that legal entity is marked as a legal employer. If it is not marked as a legal employer, you wouldn't be able to see that option under the drop. So this is what the next line also has to say. Can use other legal PSUs. Okay. So this already I have explained. Any legal entity which is not marked as PSU, it can use the other legal PSU. See, when I'm creating, I have to choose one of the unit and payroll statutory unit because it has to come under either I create the new legal entity which I'm creating as a PSU itself, or I tag other legal entity which is tagged as PSU so that it acts as a child, whichever I'm creating. We'll see that in the system so that we will understand it better. And there is also a concept of legislative data group, which is there in the slide. So this legislative data group is nothing but it is going to partition data. It is used for the payroll again. So this is created so that you abide by the payroll rules in the country. And whenever you're in the reporting purpose, it says when you create a report, you get to see that for example, the absence. So all the absence types are grouped under legislative data, all the benefits. So all the rewards, everything is coming under the legislative. So it goes according to the legislative data. So which is why it is basically to partition your employees' details, data along with the payroll data. So which is why we have a legislative data group. And this legislative data group can be associated with the legal entity, not directly. When the legal entity is created as a PSU, that PSU has to be associated with the legislative data. because legislative data group is mainly for the payroll data. It is to partition that payroll data uh, between the country or within the country also. We can do it. So it's legislative data is mainly for the country. So when I'm creating a legislative data group, I'll say India's legislative data group. India's legislative data group. If I have multiple legislative data groups within the country, for any specific or exceptional cases, I could say IND1 data group, IND2 data group. This way, I could create multiple legislative data groups within the country. But normally, from what I have seen so far, there is going to be one legislative data group. In US, there is going to be a multiple. In other countries, if I notice, it's going to be normally one. Okay. So you can have multiple entities also within the country. If payroll needs to be separated from multiple payroll members. Yeah. So this is why in case the payroll data, it's data here, if it has to be separated within the country, then we can have a multiple entities within the country. And also if there are multiple payroll vendors. Even in such cases, you can have the different entities so that you send the data for different payroll vendors based on the entities. And but for a country, there has to be at least one entity. That's what this is saying. For you to employ, for you to partition the payroll and HR data, you need at least one entity. And when you're creating a legal entity, if it is created as a PSU, payroll cycle unit, it has to be associated with the entity. So that was about legal entity, legal employer, payroll cycle unit, and then entity. Now, in addition to this, reporting unit and tax reporting unit. What is legal reporting unit is? It's nothing but a subunit of legal entity. So when you are creating a legal reporting unit, how do you associate legal reporting unit with legal entity? Is nothing but you select the legal entity and as a subdivision, you create a legal reporting. It's like for locally in India, you have created a legal entity. Now, within India, let's say Adani Ports. It's the Adani Ports was the legal entity we created. And then we need to divide that as well because it's working at the multiple locations for the local reporting purposes. In Karnataka and Maharashtra, I don't know where all it is operating. We create this multiple local reporting unit, which is nothing but because that has to abide by those local regulations, which is why we create a separating reporting unit again within the legal entity. So it's a subdivision of a legal entity. So that's the point it is saying. It's a subunit, and then it is more for the local reporting purpose. What is tax reporting unit is? So in this local reporting unit, you need to also the Karnataka follows the separate tax calculation rules, whereas Maharashtra follows the separate and Delhi follows the separate. So in this way, the taxes calculation is different. Hence, the tax reporting unit also has to be separately defined. For every legal reporting unit, you have to associate a tax reporting. But it is not mandate that you associate the tax reporting unit to a legal reporting unit, but usually it is done. But there would be a legal reporting unit without a tax reporting unit. But for a local taxation calculation, that is usually for PF. The PF is calculated for it. The billings, everything is different for separate states. In case it's it's not always separate, but some local state would have a separate rules. So based on that, we create a tax reporting unit and a legal reporting as well. While creating, so this legal reporting and this unit is created as a subunit. We have a place to create this. Tax reporting unit, while creating this itself, you can select if it is a tax reporting unit. For tax calculation, I'm going to use this reporting unit. So that you can do it. Along with that, there is also one more checkbox. So this comes with a checkbox, which is a reporting establishment. So this is mainly in the US that we use. In case for employment, for employee safety purposes, the government would make some loss, like labor loss and all. So in this case, we need to have the legal reporting unit as tax reporting establishment as well, if that is the case. So this all details come from your business itself, from your clients. So you need to check with them, asking if it has to be marked as a reporting establishment. And there is one example I could give you. In US, we follow equal employment opportunity. So there is a separate report that we send out to the government for every US organization. And in this case, if you mark this as a reporting establishment, while sending out that report to the government, that whatever the organization name that is written reporting establishment, that's legal appropriated, the same name would get printed in the report. Okay, so this was all about the legal structures. Let's quickly check on them in the system. So if I navigate to second maintenance, there is workplace deployment, and a workplace deployment there is legal structures. So all the legal structures that you have to define comes under this. So like I said, we will define whatever that we have just went through. But the first thing is legal entity. But for legal entity to be defined, we need to have a legal entity. So let's go here. I'll create one separate implement this. So I'll create it as India. Let's see. Okay. Create legal address. Like this lane one. And the city is Bangalore. Bangalore, Bangalore, and cars of the one state. Okay. You will create one more. Now let's go and this different seven please. Now we'll go to legal entity, manage legal entity. So there are already scopes, which means there are already legal entity which is selected and that is the scope. If I have to change, I need to select this into one. So I use click on so while creating the legal entity, you could see that we have to the type. Your organization is working under multiple location or multiple countries, then definitely you have to create the legal entities for that. So I'll just say Operation will be 21. So I'll just leave some identifier. This is to be given by, I don't give any start date and end date. So what we were discussing, the legal employer payroll statement. If I select this, which means this legal employer, legal entity, I could use it to hire the staff. So I am allowed by the law to hire the staff within this legal entity. If that is what is the case in the organization, then I would configure as this. If not, I would just have it as a payroll statute, or I can have neither of them. If I just choose, if I don't choose any of this, I'll just say this should be my parent legal entity. I'll just select this as a pair. I'll not parent. This is a child legal entity because I'm going to choose the other sub payroll statutory unit, which is already there. Since we are newly created, I'll create this both as a payroll statutory unit and legal employer. The legal address we had created, since we have selected the country, based on the country we had created the legal addresses. This only the country's legal addresses would populate. Choose one. So since this permanent account number, whereas if I had selected Canada, this would populate something. So if it was US, there is going to be EIN and TIN. So this way, all of this data would be different based on the legislation. The Oracle has already given what fields is appropriate. And I have all this as well. This. So now let's create another legal entity just as a legal employer, but we will choose this as a payroll statute. Create this again. Vision. Vision. What I have given. So LE 002. And I create it as a legal employer. Now, without creating a legal employer or payroll side, you can randomly choose just as the payroll statutory unit. Because I just want to follow that. But that won't serve any purpose. Because neither as a legal employer, if you are only choosing a parent or payroll statutory unit, it's not going to be a There's, so see, I had selected country as United States. There was a separate 10 or any number that is asking. So this is the number which client, the registered numbers. Now we are done with the legal entities as well. So just open Excel. What we will do is we will go to the setup we are creating. Yep. Here I created meeting address, one for Karnataka, another for Maharashtra. That one is legal entity I have given. I have created a vision, only one. And the vision LED. Whereas this is my fourth payroll statutory unit from legal employer. This has the payroll statutory unit associated with this. Next, we create legislative unit. So in here, I can, if there are multiple legislative, I can do that using the spreadsheet. Spreadsheet folder we have already seen in another section. If not already seen, please check with that. So I'll just say name as India. I am legislative data group. Now I select the entry here. And then the cost allocation is will also be available. It's mainly for payroll, finance, GL costing purposes. Now I'm not going to provide the details. So we have created, I am, so I am in the GS. Then we have the structures. So we need to, there was also one more part we had seen there. That is, we need to always associate PSU with the LDG. So now what we have marked PSU is, let's go. Select this. Okay, not here. Manage legal entity we have already created. For you to associate a legal entity which is having a PSU, payroll statutory unit, with LDG, you need to go to manage legal entity HCM information. So which legal entity I wanted to create? I want to associate and I need to select that first under the scope. So, this is the one. Yes. Yeah, we have come to that legal entity HCM information page for this legal entity. Now, associate with MDJ, I need to come to the payroll statutory unit. This tab you would only see if that is enabled as a payroll statutory unit. Now, if I go to another legal entity, I wouldn't be able to see this tab. From here, we proceed to play the license number convention. Search. Search. Now, this PSU is attached with this and teaching. And the concept. So this is the thing that we must do. And if there are any legal entity changes that we have to do, we have to do it under legal employer, like if worker numbers relation method, selecting the payroll model. Payroll model, employment model. So everything would be, we will be able to use it here. Worker number relation method. Okay. Along, apart from enterprise, whatever we configure here, this take precedence. Like what is the work relation standard working hours, employment model, what is the salary level, what is the employment terms, minimum working age, retirement age, everything we can configure there as well as here. Now, we are done with the managed legal entity HCM information. So far, where all we have navigated, managed legal address, managed legal entity, managed legal entity, HCM information. So when I create a managed legal entity, the legal entity, it also creates the, I'll show that. See, the reporting unit we did not create, but it got generated by itself. So the legal entity when we create, its reporting unit also gets created by the system automatically. This is what the legal reporting unit. But I can create other reporting unit as well for the same legal entity. There can be multiple reporting unit for the single legal entity as well. If you have reporting it for the separate purposes, then one legal entity can have a multiple reporting units. Legal reporting units, LRU. So if there is anything to have this legal reporting unit as a tax reporting unit, you need to configure that under manage legal reporting unit HCM information. So now we already know how legal entity and legal reporting unit is connected. It acts like a parent, whereas legal reporting acts as a child. This acts for the whole organization, for whole legal entity, whichever business you have taken. With that child, for locally to report it, we have the legal reporting. So now if I click on apply and move past, now I have a place where I can mark the tax reporting unit and reporting establishment. So when I do this, I would be asked to provide some details. Under reporting establishment, what should be the reporting name? This reporting name, if we are creating for some labor laws for reporting, for providing some reports to the government based on the labor laws, say employment safety, like equal employment opportunity, we do this. So I'll just give it as Vision India itself. Now, if I go to tax reporting unit, so always tax report. Now the tax reporting unit is also created. If I click on submit, it also gets created. Now I have a legal entity, legal reporting unit and a tax reporting unit. But always legal reporting unit should be associated with the PSU. PSU acts as a both legal tax reporting unit and PSU is for the payroll processing itself, for payroll related things. So, but tax reporting unit should be associated with the payroll statutory unit because that is the parent. Now, whichever legal employer which acts as the PSU, we need to associate that here. So this is our PSU. So I'll click on OK and then submit. So this way, I have done all the necessary details information is done for legal structures. When legal structures will be ready. If there are multiple things, multiple legal entities, multiple legal reporting units, everything has to be configured the same way. So that was about legal structure sessions. So I'll get back to you all with another interesting session. Until then, take care.